When I first interacted with Albedo back in version 1.2 when Dragonspine was first introduced, I had my suspicions about what diagnosis might be appropriate for him. Now with version 2.3, Shadows Amidst Snowstorms, revealing juicy new lore about his past, I'm even more confident than ever. miHoYo has pretty much confirmed for me what Albedo is psychologically dealing with, especially now that we have someone else to directly compare to. In fact, if you stay until the end of the video, we're going to discuss a way to use Albedo's psychosis to accurately know if we're talking to the real Albedo or Subject 2, otherwise aptly named by the community, Sus-Bedo. It's actually quite obvious if you know what you're looking for. This is a little psychology in Teyvat. In the latest 2.3 Dragonspine event, Shadows Amidst Snowstorms, Albedo tells the traveler the following.
I am a synthetic human being. A human forged by human hand. The one who created me, my mother and teacher. Her name is Rhine-Daughter, a researcher from Conria, also known as Gold.
A synthetic human? What the... How the heck does that work?
When the pinnacle of attainment in alchemy is combined with unimaginably vast learning, the apex achievement is the creation of human life.
If you've been acquainted with Genshin Impact lore at all since the last foray in Dragonspine, you will probably already know about a theory regarding Albedo's creation. This paired with the fact that his constellations come in the form of a fetus, and each constellation title is tangentially linked to creation, alongside his now confirmed connections with the infamous Gold, who is said to be responsible for the creation of abyssal monsters that would lead to the destruction of Conria. And it would not be a misplaced conclusion that he may not be naturally born. After doing some research, I realized that Albedo may actually be suffering from multiple psychoses. This is actually not uncommon. In fact, it is actually quite common for various psychoses to manifest together or cause other forms of psychosis to develop as a result of an earlier one. This in psychology is called comorbidity. Comorbidity is defined as the simultaneous presence of two or more diseases or medical conditions in a patient. Albedo is suffering from both antisocial personality disorder or ASPD, of which you've probably already guessed, as well as a mild version of adult attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD for short. The main difference between the adult and child versions of ADHD is simply in how pronounced the symptoms are expressed. These symptoms include impulsiveness, restlessness, and difficulty paying attention. Studies have shown that there is an increased risk for children with ADHD to develop a later onset of antisocial personality disorder, possibly due to the fact that people with ADHD have trouble focusing on anything that they have no desire in. This can be expanded out to their social relationships where they have difficulty focusing on someone long enough to actually get to know them. From the outside looking in, this can often look like manipulation to others, even though it's intentionally not. Another name for antisocial personality disorder is sociopathy, although it is not an official clinical term. We can see this very plainly by the fact that Albedo does not interact with others in a normal way. It is likely that he perceives relationships as a transaction, similar to how he treats the traveler when he first meets them. He immediately puts them to work in proving his current research. They are not a person, but a means to an end. And then, when they prove to be worthy of study, Albedo immediately switches gears to testing them in order to further his own selfish knowledge. We've already seen countless times over Albedo lost in his own thoughts, while other characters are discussing more immediately pressing matters. Albedo simply finds his own ideas far more interesting. Albedo is also not very expressive, and although there are distinct limitations to the facial animations in Genshin Impact's character expressions, Albedo not only has a very straight facial expression, but his English voice actor Koi Dao does an impressive job at revealing how hyper-focused and somewhat monotone he is. Even when Albedo is excited about a new discovery, he shows it through stunted emotion compared to those around him. He even triggers Paimon into saying one of my favorite rage mode lines from her.
What a stupid question! Can't you see the gap between us? And another thing, it's Paimon, not floating child!
Antisocial personality disorder unfortunately does not have a definitive cause, as there are various elements that can be found in someone with this psychosis. Genetics, one's environment, and cultural factors all play a major role in the development of ASPD. At the same time, males are 3 to 5 times more likely to be diagnosed than females, which is likely due to the cultural factors like how more masculine people are expected to achieve more, and so they do not tend to value genuine relationships over transactional relationships, as much as more feminine people do. Also, children who exhibit both conduct disorder and ADHD at a young age are also more likely to develop ASPD when paired with a disruptive environment, especially at home. So where did Albedo's psychosis come from if not from these normal circumstances? Albedo is likely and ironically the product of the very branch of science that he excels at, alchemy. He confirms for many of us theorists that he is the product of human hands, the hands of his master and teacher, Rhine-Daughter, otherwise known as Gold.
I am a synthetic human being. A human forged by human hand. The one who created me, my mother and teacher. Her name is Rhine-Daughter, a researcher from Conria, also known as Gold.
A synthetic human? What the... How the heck does that work?
When the pinnacle of attainment in alchemy is combined with unimaginably vast learning, the apex achievement is the creation of human life.
According to Albedo, he was created using what he calls the pinnacle of attainment in alchemy, and is combined with unimaginably vast learning. There is only one aspect of alchemy that I can think of that matches this description, the Philosopher's Stone. This mythical stone in alchemic lore, to explain it very briefly, is said to transform base elements into greater elements like lead into gold through a process called transmutation, and will grant the user immortality. It is said to be the culmination of opposites, which is what gives it its miraculous existence. If you want to learn more about alchemy and the Philosopher's Stone in Genshin Impact, I have a video link in the description that goes into further detail. Albedo states that the apex achievement, the Philosopher's Stone, is to create human life, to which he is likely to be. We have also learned from the 2.3 event that there was at least one other Albedo that was created, of which the community has aptly named Sus-Bedo. This actually makes me wonder if Rhine-Daughter might actually look like Albedo, and if Albedo is a male copy of her. It would parallel with the real-life concept that the Philosopher's Stone can create gold and grant immortality. As mind-boggling as that may sound, it's not as much of a stretch when one realizes that to create copies of oneself is a method of pseudo-immortality. Anyways, back to psychology. Albedo was likely born as a blank slate, which is why he refers to himself as chalk, the basis of all life, and was taught by Rhine-Daughter, as he tells us, in the ways of alchemy. Was it to continue her work, or to fix it, or maybe even to redeem her? We'll have to wait and see, but that does not stop us from recognizing that Albedo likely grew up without much interaction with the outside world, and I would argue that Albedo's introduction into Mondstadt was probably the first time he was involved in a society. He tells us that he was quote-unquote born after the fall of Conria, so it's not like he was born into a society.
I am indeed somewhat older than my appearance might suggest, but when I came into being, Conria had already been destroyed. I have no memories of it.
If Rhine-Daughter was in part responsible for the fall of Conria, then she likely disappeared into seclusion after the gods of Celestia descended, and then began work on Albedo and Durin. Albedo also does not speak as if he really knew Durin, but is rather just studying him, maybe to find clues about his past. We do know that Sus-Bedo was incubated inside of Durin and was likely released shortly after Dvalin defeated him. This is all to prove that Albedo did not actually interact with other people until his ventures in Mondstadt, stunting the socialization process that would have taught him very valuable social skills to maintain relationships, at a young age, when these processes are still being developed in most people. Even now, due to his intensive fixation on his work, he is often secluded, buried within his research, and focused on singular objectives. This is the perfect breeding ground for antisocial personality disorder. At this point in time, it is his expertise in alchemy that keeps both Sucrose and Timaeus so connected to him. Otherwise, I'm unconvinced that he would have any friends of his own. But then again, Albedo probably doesn't think he needs any friends, hence why he secludes himself in the eternal wintry mountain of Dragonspine. This upbringing, alongside an eternal need to learn more and more, possibly inherited from his master, would undoubtedly spur on an aptitude towards antisocial behavior and ADHD that has manifested into ASPD. This is definitely not to say that by having this disorder that one is barred from functioning in society, but it is the relationship building part that becomes increasingly more difficult. The concept of friends becoming more than just working relationships is unlikely, because there is no motivation to actually get to know others. We can clearly see this simply from Albedo's interactions with the rest of his fellow knights.
There you are. Stay right there. You have a lot of explaining to do.
What? Me?
Huh? You, Aren't you supposed to be helping the new guy?
Yes, that's what I would be doing, if I hadn't been interrupted by a certain someone's malicious scheming.
Shadows Amidst Snowstorms provides us with the definitive proof of Albedo's ASPD, and also allows us to be able to tell which Albedo is the real one. Take a listen to these excerpts from the two different Albedos.
Your thought process is rather chaotic, as is the way in which you articulate it.
Hey! How dare you! All Paimon's trying to say is that we came here to look for you!
But you have to be selective with the specimens you choose. Even with a high level of impurities, star silver still contains fine silver-colored particles, but they lack luster, which impacts the color saturation of the pigment made from them. Paint made with such pigment is generally viewed as a fake or a defective
What brings
product.
you to Dragonspine?
Oh, so it was Albedo all along!
All along? Oh, what do you mean by
The
that?
incident is behind us now.
We should keep
Turning
moving.
fruit into juice is not hard, but keeping it fresh is more difficult. But if you simply want to keep the fruit from rotting, there are many ways to achieve this. Right, Traveler? What's wrong? Is there something on my neck? From the look on your face, it's as if you thought I just played a practical joke on you that was in exceedingly poor taste.
I've read countless theories about how the fake Albedo would not have been able to pull a prank like the one shown at the end of Act 3, because he does not know the Traveler well enough, or that the Albedo we encounter would not have the information to talk about the things he did with Paimon. I would like to add my 2 cents into the conversation, but also back my assertions up with psychology. I'll start by saying that I'm convinced that the Albedo we meet at the end of Act 3 is indeed Sus-Bedo, even though he magically slaps on the diamond scar on his neck. Likely, Sus-Bedo has realized that the Traveler is identifying him through the missing scar, and so, like any well-adjusted person who can read others, he adds the scar back on his appearance to complete his identity theft. Now, did you catch what I just said there? Sus-Bedo is actually a socially well-adjusted person. His dialogue matches that of the other characters in that he is able to read them correctly and does not act awkward like someone with ASPD. He smiles to express his approval and answers questions directly rather than losing himself in his own thoughts. This is the one factor that Sus-Bedo has ironically failed in copying, because it is a psychological trait and not a physical one. No whooper flower is going to be able to copy the symptoms of psychosis. So, if there is still some disagreement that the Act 3 Albedo is not Sus-Bedo, let's squash that right now. Let's listen to how he responds to Paimon's juicer idea.
Turning fruit into juice is not hard, but keeping it fresh is more difficult. But if you simply want to keep the fruit from rotting, there are many ways to achieve this. Right, Traveler?
Sus-Bedo actually reads the Traveler's facial expressions and deduces correctly that the Traveler suspects foul play, because Sus-Bedo is missing the scar. Sus-Bedo then plays it off as a prank. Very strategic. But let's be real here. The real Albedo would never in a million years have come to this conclusion. And if you listen very carefully, Sus-Bedo even chuckles when responding to the Traveler, a clear sign of someone who might be a little nervous, right after he generates the scar back onto his neck.
What's wrong? Is there something on my neck? From the look on your face, It's as if you thought I just played a practical joke on you that was in exceedingly poor taste.
Again, let me stress that the real Albedo would not be nervous ever, because he just doesn't care enough about the other characters, as horrible as that may sound, to interpret their feelings like this. And then there's the smile, which I think is a dead giveaway. Our Albedo just has no need for smiling. In fact, I combed through all of my footage involving Albedo, and not once could I find Albedo genuinely smiling. This was the closest I got, and I stared at this image and many others for a long time, debating with myself if I could somehow convince myself that he was actually smiling. He doesn't even smile after fixing the Traveler's meme-tastic painting of Paimon. Who knows, Sus-Bedo may have been watching the painting session and learned this smile from the Traveler, because these two images look awfully similar, right? These specific tells, I believe, are definitive proof that the Act 3 character we encounter is Sus-Bedo, otherwise known as Subject 2. The exciting part about all of this is that we travelers will have to be extra careful and keen on reading Albedo in the future, as we will not know from this point onward from his appearance if we're talking to Albedo or Sus-Bedo. Thankfully though, we have the power of psychology, and hopefully consistency from miHoYo's writing team to give us the clues that we need to decipher who we are interacting with when the next quest with Albedo arrives. Unfortunately for our Albedo, there is very little that he himself can do in this situation apart from recognize his antisocial behavior and surround himself with others that can understand the disorder and can offset its effects. And because ASPD can often be hidden from the person, they are unlikely to address the issues themselves. Therefore, having others around can be the only way to expose them to the social conventions that they so desperately need to emulate. And as a disorder like this progresses, Albedo's behavior without interruption will cause others to be pushed away. Not only that, but Albedo himself will begin to recognize that and be encouraged to keep others away from himself, especially if he perceives that he is a danger to others, as he has already proven.
Traveler, perhaps you should return to Mondstadt if you have no further business here. The work that lies ahead will occupy me completely. I'm afraid I will be unable to entertain you beyond this point.
Thankfully, both the Traveler and Paimon are open to assisting Albedo, even with him protesting for them to leave him be, for their protection, of course.
If there's something really bad going on, we can't just leave you here to deal with it on your own. That wouldn't be very nice now, would it?
I want to be absolutely clear though. I do not believe that Albedo is an evil character, even though his behavior would seem rather callous. It is entirely unintentional. He just has not developed the social skills to be able to properly interact with the everyday folk, even as the chief alchemist of Mondstadt. In fact, it may actually be his elevated status that bars him even further from mortal interaction. The true irony here is that it will be his social awkwardness that allows the Traveler and us to identify him from Sus-Bedo. Of course, what do you think? Is Albedo exhibiting antisocial personality disorder, and is the Traveler and Paimon enough to at least relieve him of the negative effects? Could there be other characters in Genshin Impact that could help Albedo, like perhaps Klee? Or maybe Albedo's past ultimately will define who he is until his dying breath, possibly at the hands of the people who are trying to save him. If there is a character in Genshin Impact that you think would be worthy of psychoanalysis, let me know in the comments and I will do my best to look into the possibilities. And if you have your own thoughts about Albedo's possible psychosis, jot it down for discussion as well. And if you enjoyed this video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. By liking this video, you'll be actively telling YouTube that this video and all my other videos are worth watching. Better yet, please share this video with a fellow Genshin Impact player so that we can start a dialogue on the psychological aspects of the characters we all love so much. And follow me on Twitter to know when I post and read some Genshin memes along the way. And thank you for visiting A Little Psychology in Teyvat.
Hey, my name's Paimon. That's not true. Stupid questions. Why would you ask that? It's Paimon. We're being untitled. Mark my words. Vengeance will be mine. Paimon's all out of brain juice again.